Okay, I had a topic planned for this week, but somebody brought up a point in a group online, and it was something I'd never really thought about before in an in-depth way on here, and I decided that'd be the topic for this week. First of all, I do want to say there was an extreme change in weather here. We went from almost hot to cold, and I gotta fix the squeaky chair here, and my sinuses went all to hell all over again. I don't have a cold, but I have all kinds of sinus issues going on. So if I start hacking and coughing or my voice gives out through this thing, it's not because I'm chronically sick. It's just the weather decided to do what it wanted to do, and I got hit with it. But I've talked about on here many times before how AA is always changing around the word alcoholic and talking about the word real alcoholic and all that other horse shit, or how they'll say, you know, if a person, you can't know you're an alcoholic until you declare yourself an alcoholic. You have to come to that decision. You have to figure that out for yourself. No one else in AA can call you an alcoholic. You have to find that definition for yourself. But they'll turn right around and they'll say if somebody quits drinking and leaves AA and doesn't drink again, they'll either say he's a dry drunk who's going to relapse and end up back in here if he survives to get back in here, or they'll tell you he was never really an alcoholic to begin with. They'll tell you something like, if you're seriously as alcoholic as we are, out of their book, you know, there's no middle of the road solution. You may not be as seriously alcoholic as we are, they'll say in a condescending, underhanded way to somebody new. What they're really saying is you're in denial about what you really are, but you're actually one of us. You just don't know it yet. They generally cheer on people like that going out drinking some more and dying. I've actually seen them in newcomer meetings tell the new guy, you know, I don't even know if you're serious enough. Maybe you need to go out and get drunk some more. If somebody comes to a meeting for some fucking help and all you can do is get on your high horse and act like you're superior to them and tell them to drink themselves to death, that's a real winning strategy to help people out. And of course, they'll tell you they're not there to baby you, which is a classic thing that bullies will do. They'll treat you like garbage. They'll treat you like shit. They'll come at you in every kind of demeaning, underhanded way. And then when you call them out on it, they'll either try to make out like they were really just trying to save your life and they didn't really mean all that, or they'll say something like, well, I'm not here to baby you. Not asking you to fucking baby me. I'm asking you to talk to me like a fucking adult human being. But this is one topic I'd never thought about before. It was posted in this group. In fact, I'll just go ahead and read it. Have you ever noticed how they can never define what sober is? Like if an AA old-timer is hateful and bitter, he's not labeled as a dry drunk like a new person would be. But if a person is working steps and miserable, people will say they're not truly sober. But then they'll say something like, if you don't drink, today is a good day. I hadn't thought of that, about the way that they're always changing and redefining what the word sobriety means until I saw that post. But I thought it bared discussion. In fact, I remember a sponsor I had, the last sponsor I had. I've talked about him on here before. He was a utterly garbage human being. I mean, a piece of shit all the way through and through. But he was obsessed about somebody not being a real alcoholic, or somebody being a real alcoholic, or he was really, really, really adamant about no drug addicts in AA meetings. You know, if someone introduced themselves in an AA meeting as a drug addict, as an alcoholic and an addict, he would make a big ugly fuss about the whole thing. He's like, you know, anybody can shoot up heroin and become a drug addict. Not many people become alcoholics. Lots of people get drunk and don't become alcoholics. Now, of course, to cap it all off with a sense of irony that not even some of the best writers of that type of genre could come up with, this particular sponsor, he never had a drinking problem. He was actually a drug addict who went to AA when he got in some legal trouble 20 some odd years prior to me ever meeting him. But that was actually the true case. He actually sort of admitted that one time to me because I rented from him, you know. But it was kind of ironic that the guy who never had a problem with alcohol, that was just a bullying drug addict, hated drug addicts in his meetings and was always redefining what the word alcohol meant. But I saw him say that certain old-timers, even though they would go and smoke pot, they were actually sober, that pot was an outside issue. It had nothing to do with, there's nothing in the big book about smoking pot, was his excuse for that. But he would also turn around and he would talk about how people who are on prescription medication from psychiatrists weren't really sober. And I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to work exactly. How do you know this? I mean, how do you know exactly that somebody smoking pot is spiritual and sober, and someone who takes prescription medication that was given to him by a psychiatrist is not actually spiritual and sober? Where do you get that determination from? Did the AA God in whatever dimension it lives in, did it actually, beam that information to you? It's exclusive to where me and the rest of the outside world doesn't know about it. And I wouldn't, I know the AA old timers who are probably watching this channel that all hate me would chime in here and say, well, that was just one man. Not all AA people feel that way. A lot of AA people don't believe that. Why, my whole group, we would never tell you, yeah. The reason why I brought him up, he's a prime example of the type of behavior that this guy is talking about in this post, and that I saw in meetings a lot over the years. Not just him. He's not one bizarre anomaly that I didn't see on a regular basis. I would see people all the time in meetings that would talk about how they weren't really sober because they were doing Prozac at one point. One guy said, the doctor had me on Prozac, and I said I had 90 days of sobriety. I didn't have 90 days of sobriety. It was when I did the fourth step and realized I didn't need Prozac any longer that I knew I had real sobriety. Well, how the fuck do you decide that? Real sobriety. It's like real alcoholic, real sobriety, real program, real this. For a bunch of phony people like they are that make up all kinds of stuff, that lie and talk out of both sides of their mouth, they sure do seem to believe they have a corner market on what's real and what's not real, even though they can't define what reality is. You notice they'll tell you that somebody who leaves and doesn't get drunk again is not a real alcoholic, and somebody who's angry and pissed off and hadn't had a drink in 10 years is not really sober. But if you ask them, well, what's a real alcoholic? What's really sober? Then they'll give you some half-assed definition out of their literature to justify their horseshit claims that they're obviously pulling out of the sky at any given moment just to make it all up. It was kind of like, man, more sinus stuff. Kind of like the same sponsor I had that says smoking pot was an outside issue, but popping pills was not real sobriety. I remember one time there was somebody that was talking about alcohol as a drug like any other, but he said alcohol is not a drug. It has no medicinal properties whatsoever, but, drinking alcohol is what AA is all about. Doing some illegal street drug is not sobriety. It is not mentioned in the big book. I thought, well, doing prescription medication as prescribed by you, by a doctor, is not written in the big book either. But I guess it's kind of like certain real radical Christians do with their Bibles. They pick and choose the parts they like to back up whatever their claims are. Even though the big book has no basis in fact whatsoever, it's nothing more than the collective ramblings and the collective blabber, of a couple of old-timer weirdos that stole a lot of other stuff from the other writers in the big book. It's nothing of any scientific value to it whatsoever, but it didn't ever occur to me how often the definition of sobriety gets changed again and again and again in AA. I've seen people say, I white-knuckled it for 10 years. I white-knuckled it for 10 years. I didn't even work any steps. I was angry. I hated everybody. I caught an assault charge. I tried to kill a police officer. I almost did this hostile takeover of my company, and I had to be let out by 50 security guards. But I didn't drink in all those 10 years, and that's why I'm picking up this 10-year medallion tonight. There's nobody that's going to stand up right there and say, well, that's not real sobriety. Maybe you should have smoked some pot. That's real sobriety. Nobody's going to do that in terms of defining what real sobriety is and what real sobriety is not. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of getting confused trying to talk about this very subject in this damn video. With all this conundrums and all these contradictions and all these made-up terms and all these ever-changing definitions. To be honest, no wonder I had such a problem with relapsing in AA. I was actually listening to all that shit and trying to take it seriously. I like what one guy commented on that particular post. In fact, I like it every time he comments. I won't say his name out here on YouTube for everybody to hear, but he said, those assholes make it up as they go along. Whatever gives them the chance to abuse new people and prey on the vulnerable. I've seen so-called old-timers show up to meetings high as a kite, then celebrating their anniversary a few weeks later. But if you don't pray to a doorknob, you're a dry drunk, whatever the hell they mean by that. Decades of my life spent around these scums. Once you leave, they never reach out. Then again, I never reached out to those dregs either. It's kind of like, why would you want to do that? The dictionary definition is a lady posted, said, sober, according to Merriam-Webster, says not intoxicated or affected by the use of alcohol or drugs, abstaining from her or habitually abstaining in the use of alcohol, drink, or other intoxicants, straightforward and serious, not exaggerated, emotional, or silly. So, in definition 1, as she writes, you can have wine with a big meal and be sober. You're not intoxicated. In definition 2, it's absence from intoxicants, she writes. Well, what's an intoxicant? The dictionary is kind of an ass about it. It says something that intoxicates. Okay, so what does that mean to intoxicate? And then she writes, to excite or stupefy by alcohol or drug, especially to the point where physical and mental control is markedly diminished. To excite or relate to the point of enthusiasm or frenzy. Not seeing where's Johnny antidepressant or mood stabilizer comes into play there, you know. And she's right. But I've actually seen people that were made to feel less than, that were told they didn't really have real sobriety because they were on medications that was prescribed to them by their doctors. I've seen people that said that, now, you know, that the fourth step wasn't a real fourth step because they were taking drugs when they did it. You know, I remember one guy who totally made up story, and in my opinion, it's dangerous to tell these kind of lies to people who are vulnerable and on medication in those rooms. But he said, I was popping Prozac like candy at one point, and when I did the fourth step, I just flushed the Prozac down the toilet because I said, I'm not really sober under the use of Prozac. And I thought, okay, so Prozac in a fourth step is not real. Prozac flushed down the toilet in a real fourth step with a real alcoholic, that's more real than you know, there's I've alluded to it on here before. There was the radio comedy that I listen to fairly regularly, the old shows that are posted from the BBC, The Goon Show. The Goon Show would have had a field day with this, because the Goon Show by itself was always hitting at the absurdity of life altogether, and I think they would have just had a great time dealing with this nonsense as it is on here. But man, if you can't define what sobriety is, and you can't really define what an alcoholic is, and you can't really define what serenity is, that's another one, then all these terms don't mean anything at all. You could substitute those words for any number of any other random word on the street, and it would be just as effective or just as useful to you, because it doesn't ever add up or make sense in any kind of coherent way. You'll hear people talk about how they white-knuckled it for 20 years, but they're really sober, and then you'll hear other people talk about how, you know, they prayed to God one time and the obsession was removed, and they've been on cloud 9 for the last 20 or 30 years, and how that's real sobriety. Just like I could do a whole nother video about the way they screw with the word varieties of spiritual experience and all that other kind of thing, but I think I pretty much covered the gist of where I'm going with this in this one. So if you get anything out of that, chime in on the comments. Let me know some of the more weird times and encounters you've had where they've tried to redefine the word sober, redefine the word spiritual, redefine the word alcoholic. Matter of fact, why don't we redefine what drinking really means before it's all over with? Anyway, until next time.